Okay, cool. So I'm just going to run through a short introduction to Des. Des is a Des has been in BI for many years. He has worked as a data scientist at 22/7. He has been a data engineering and BI specialist at Debtline, and he is in his current role commandeering the BI team to its fullest at the Student Hub. Um, Today, we're going to be discussing trends in data, how to best prepare for them, the mental health implications of having such a high level of responsibility within a key aspect of the modern organization, and also how people eager to enter into the data space really can best prepare. So yeah, that's what today's Data Dragons is. First, just a little bit of admin. Please keep your mics off. This is being recorded, and we do assume your consent to recording by being here. And this will be on the YouTube channel later for your perusal. And there is time for Q&A aside from the set question list. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay. First of all, thank you so much for attending, Des. Really appreciate it. And then let's get right off. So how did you come to be in this position where you are not just a BI lead, but you also effectively perform three really distinct roles of data warehouse developer, database administrator, and BI developer / analyst simultaneously?
Awesome. First of all, I would like to thank you, Celestine, for inviting me to this portal to share my data journey with you, with the Data Dragons. Um, yeah, how I ended up here being a lead or having these multiple roles. Well, I to start off things, let me just share my little background. So I did a BSc in Maths and Stats, and that BSc was like just a pinch of salt, into this data industry. Then yeah, it did. Then I ended up doing an honors. So the BSc didn't have projects, and I couldn't create a great profile for myself to get a job. That was in 2016. Then I did this joint honors where I had supervisors from different industries and also university to sort of supervise me when I was doing my studies. That's how I actually got my first job. And this honors was honors in BI and data analytics. It's offered by the University of Western Cape. It's a part-time course. It has quite a number of modules, which are sub sort of data domains. Like we did things like making data-driven decision making, um, master data management, um, building ETL pipelines like from scratch, designing ERDs, implementing them, and also building the pipelines and monitoring them. And lastly, doing some data science. Um, so that's basically when I started falling in love with data. And yeah, the projects which I did in my honors, like all of them, I was doing at a company called Impact. That's where I got my first job as a data analyst. So uh, the main project which I did for them was actually building a chain model, which I used to work with the director of operations to sort of predict chain. And at the end of the owners, they actually found that the project was fit enough for implementation. Then they implemented it, um, which was a great thing. But back then, I was very young. I was confused. I was more of an Excel guy. I didn't know what to do. Then I moved to my second role, which was the role at 22/7, and 22/7 is a small startup which is in the fintech space. They are into personal finance. They have a good categorization engine which categorizes all your transactions. Like for instance, when you buy something at any shop, it puts all your transactions in different categories. Like for instance, if you buy something at a liquor store, it says alcohol, it puts them into like categories. That's where I work there as a data scientist. So 227, yeah, it's actually a small company owned by Old Mutual. So I would say it's uh, 45% corporate and 55% a startup. So we were a team of developers. My role personally was more like a 35 split, 35-65 split, 65 PI, um, 35% research and data science. So I spent there 2 years. Then I moved to another role to Debtline, where I got a full intro into BI, where I was doing like everything: data ops, solution design, maintenance, splitting infrastructures. Yeah, that's how I basically sort of ended up here being a lead. So I feel like I moved around, into these sort of subdomains, getting all this experience, um, and get this experience to be here, yeah, as a lead. Um, yeah, because basically all I wanted is to be the go-to guy, when we talk about data. And yeah, I'm getting there.
I think that's amazing, summarizing yourself as the go-to guy for data, because that really does sum up what you do. Yeah, so you've experienced so much work in both startups and well, more corporate organizations. Do you feel that there are two very distinct spaces within those organizations, like the way the BI space operates with them? Do you find that you had more scope for growth within the startups? Do you find that you had just had a better, because of the corporates, they had more defined workings of the business intelligence and data engineering, and so therefore you were at less space to grow? Or what was your experience there?
Yeah, I would be honest to you. The bigger the startup, the less the growth you sort of get there, like the exposure, because there's quite a number of people who are experienced, and they they just give you, like for instance, a window to fit. But whereas when the startup is very small, they give you just the cement and everything and the bricks. Go and build a house. So that's how I see these two different spaces. Like for instance, when I was at 227, we didn't really monitor the ETL scripts and stuff, and like the ML ops, data ops side of things. We used to just do like the front end and a little bit of research. um, and when I moved to Deadline, we were only two, me and the head of data. Before he left, he used to like say, "Des, okay, this is the project scope. Like, we want to move data from Zendesk to Google Cloud and later visualize it in ClickSense." I'm like, "Oh, okay, where do I fit in?" And he was like, "No, you're gonna do the whole entire project. He was gonna sort of manage the project, break it down into nice smaller pieces." So yeah, there is definitely great room for growth in smaller startups, but the only disadvantage is that they don't really uh, fund you or pay for your if you want to sort of upskill or study. But if you are in a big corporate or a big organization, they do have those sort of schemes where they pay you to do anything which is in that particular domain.
Yes, yes. Okay, that makes sense. Having, startups just be there and really giving yourself the space to grow. But that must have been really challenging to go and have to fill that whole project by yourself. I can't imagine just the stress and the pressure that must have been. But well, I mean, you seem fine, so clearly you made it out.
Yeah, it's sometimes there are some blockers which you sort of face when doing stuff. Like for instance, a deadline. So Debtline actually it's now an individual company. It was owned by a group called Infinity Group. At some point, investors they decided to say no, we don't wanna fund Debtline, so Debtline should sort of move out of our space, and then they continue doing their own thing. Then on the data side, the way it was built, the infrastructure was built for all the companies. So we had one server where we used to run all our jobs, everything. Like we had something like 60 scripts running on a server. Then there was me, who was maintaining everything. And then they said, okay, Des, you have to split this infrastructure. You have to build one full infrastructure for Debtline and also for another company called MasterStart. You have to separate them basically. But this current server is for MasterStart. You guys, you should start yours. So it was one of the heavy tasks which I came across at Debtline. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Oh my word. I can't imagine it. Okay. Well, you touched on this already when you mentioned that startups don't provide the same kind of financial means to upskill yourself. But data is such a changing space, and trends and innovations they're always happening here. I remember when I started out, data analysis was kind of like the go-to job, and then it progressed onwards to data science, and now everyone's talking about data engineering. How do you keep up with the demands of constantly having to innovate your skill set? Is there a specific way that you manage to predict what will be useful for companies, not just now, but to future proof yourself for the job market within the next few years?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, it was data analysis, then data engineering. Data science. That's where my mind was, back 3 years ago. But when I go to data science, yeah, the work there is too much. That's when people realize that data science is just something which is here, but the actual work is sitting within the data engineering space. Um, and also, yeah, so it was more of a challenge for me, and also money. I think there is a lot of money on the data engineering side of things. um yeah. And about me, I personally, I go through articles every Monday, like Medium articles. I did subscribe to that. You know I learn from like industry experts who are top voices from on LinkedIn, the likes of Alexei Grigov. And lastly, the guy who mentored me on my previous role is now the head of data at TFG. I still chat with him, and also attending meetups. Like last week, I did attend another meetup for data architects, and it was great, to just know what other people are doing out there.
Yes, yes. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, before I continue, Takunda and Jay, do you have anything you would like to ask or share with Desmond? Okay.
Uh, Sorry, yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting story right there, Des. And I'm proud of you, man. Just maybe one question is you're speaking of this journey, and it sounds like it was really bumpy. You had a lot that you had to learn in a very short space of time with limited resources. What's the one thing that you could say kept you going? What is it that really made you continue going in this somewhat bumpy road, and probably could assist all the other ones that are upcoming in this career and want to end up where you are now?
Yeah, man. I There's this when I got this role, I literally posted on my WhatsApp 3 years back, saying that I want to be writing emails like I want to be a lead in 7 years to come, and then I got the role in 3 years, in 3 years time. So what kept me going was it's actually me breaking down, my sort of goals, like what I want to achieve in 3 years or 5 years, then a bigger time frame. I would say when you sort of have those goals in place, um, prioritize the short term ones. Uh, I know that we wanna be millionaires at the end, but just aim to get that 1,000 rand, which is those baby steps. Um, they will definitely get you to your end goal.
I'm just going to read Jay's question to you, Des. Knowing what you know now about data and infrastructure, are there any changes you would have made to your initial architecture decisions, or did you do extensive planning before executing them? I think that's a great question, Jay.
Can you repeat it? I can't. Okay.
Basically, knowing what you know now about the data and infrastructure choices you made, would there be any changes you made, or did you do extensive planning? I think that's a great question because, I mean,
Okay.
looking back at software, you do,
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I was going to sort of use this as an example at the end. So when I was at Debtline, like as I've mentioned, like our infrastructure which we had there, it wasn't built by me, and like 70% of it was built by someone, and with more than 80 scripts running there. It wasn't a beast. It didn't have anything like something like alerts or triggers. Like for instance, when something breaks overnight. From there, it was a big learning thing for me, to sort of wherever I go is, I have to create some sort of a serverless infrastructure, something which which works without, which needs less maintenance compared, to what we used to have a Debtline where every day you spend 4 hours debugging stuff, rather than having things like Slack alerts, and triggers when something breaks overnight. So I would say uh, planning ahead before you even start building any infrastructure, like anything, does help, and try to sort of think of what could go wrong, and how you could proactively sort of resolve it, or how you could be like 5 steps ahead that particular problem.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think that's great. Just the example of alerts and triggers and just those small things. You never realize how important those small things can be, especially in a moment of a crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I couldn't have someone who is so adept at not just data engineering, but also data modeling, data science, and machine learning as well, and not ask about, artificial intelligence. On the one hand, having done so much work on it myself, I know it's a bit of a buzzword, but seeing as you've worked so much within the financial space and also just have so much experience within this field, from a data perspective, to what extent would you say that you've actually managed to utilize machine learning within your career, and within your day-to-day work? And what impact have you seen it had on your organizations? And then conversely, have you ever been in a situation where you've just been like, look, our organization is just not ready enough, and we really do need to focus more on human processes, getting that ready for automation, and just the basics of data engineering?
Yeah, to start off, I would say companies, really need to understand their data first before even talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence. I personally, I've done projects like the one biggest projects which I'm proud of, which I've done and has been implemented, is the chain model which I did for Impact. So again, it's very expensive to lose a client than to acquire them. Like imagine losing someone like Uber or hotels.com. Those were our clients basically. So it was very, very useful. Then when I moved to 22/7, we, believe it or not, we were 6 data scientists, and it took us 3 years to implement our first model. So I would say, yeah, it's one. We need the right people, in the office, in the space, like people who does like ML ops to sort of actually maintain models while they're in production. Some people who help us put them into production. Like for instance, at 22/7, basically, their categorization engine works on SQL, basically on regex patterns. Then later they built it on top, then they used ML to actually make it better, but it took quite long to do that. And the other project which I did for them was predicting life events. At first, we were like, oh, let's just try to build clusters and find people who are gonna have a baby, and it was very, very difficult to do that. But when we sort of built some sort of a rule-based model, a SQL query, where we looked at people who had transactions, buying baby items, visiting gynaes and stuff, and buying any books, about parenting. Then we realized that no, we don't need a model for this. Let's use this SQL query to sort of flag those customers, then later label our data so that we can actually build a model on top of that. So I would say, yeah, the first step before anything is to sort of understand, the data, clean it. Companies should sort of invest more in the data engineering side of things, so that they would have clean data than anything.
Yes, creating a single language for the whole company to understand, and just a common dictionary, and just making sure that the whole company really understands the basics of what kind of data they're generating and how it's being used. Yeah, that would deliver a lot of results. Okay, something that I really wanted to touch on, especially because you have such a demanding role and such a core one within today, is that as mental health awareness only grows in importance, is there a kind of mental or lifestyle impact that you have to face because you carry so much core responsibility within your company? Or is there ever been situations where you've just never been able to switch off, or just have felt like this is just too much? I really should choose something a bit more easier, something like that.
Yeah, on the data science side of things, it's quite difficult to switch off, because you're always thinking of finding, the best way to optimize something, a model or anything, or to find a better algorithm which will, increase your accuracy. Okay. So it's quite difficult that on the data science side of things. But if you move on to the BI space and the data engineering side of things, it's manageable. Like as I've said earlier on, if you can build a great pipeline where you have alerts, triggers, tests, and a pipeline which is cost effective, you'll be definitely 5 steps ahead of everything. Then you can do a little bit of, you can rest basically.
What do you think makes the data science side a bit more demanding mentally? Is it just because of it takes so much longer to understand the data, to piece together the model, to prepare, and to make sure that what you're predicting is actually correct? Or is it some other factor?
Yeah, I feel like when I was doing when I was a data scientist, we were more obsessed in building very complicated models. Like I can fit a neural network, I can do this, I can do this and that, rather than just doing a logistic regression. I can tell, like banks basically use them. Bigger companies use smaller models. Where you go into smaller companies, they're hungry to build these massive beast models, and the more you build it, the more you get, you know the more you drown into it, and you obsessed with this accuracy. You want to improve the accuracy, you want to fit another model. Someone comes with something, a theory, you want to try that and stuff. There is no one straight way of doing it, basically. Whereas in data engineering, it's not one way, but there is some sort of a direction.
Oh, okay. So the fact that there's more of like, I want to call it a recipe, but there's a more standard recipe to follow makes it okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Cool. And then data engineering, data analytics, data science as well. There are such coveted spaces to be in. What advice do you have for graduates or people wanting to transition into the space from other roles who may not have a lot of experience within the space, or maybe coming from a totally separate function within companies?
I would say finding a mentor, someone who's going to help you grow, someone who's going to sort of, guide you. Yeah, because you'll be finding someone who has co-experience, someone who has experienced this, someone who knows what's ahead. That would be great. Um, Doing a lot of Udemy courses. That's good. The Udemy courses are really good. People, they just do them for the sake of doing them, so that they just get the certificate, but not getting the actual, knowledge out of the courses. I really wish I was introduced to Udemy back in university, because my BSc was like more proof this, proof that. Uh, we had only clean data sets to fit linear regression models. But if you go on Udemy, you will find messy data sets, messy, yeah, stuff. And yeah, and joining things like Slack communities, and attending meetups, you would definitely meet the right people to sort of who show you the right direction. Yeah.
Okay, just before I continue, Jay, Takunda, or Michael, do you have any further questions for Des?
I have a question, if I can ask. So I know with talking about mental health and habits and so on, I was wondering, I know earlier on you mentioned a different percentage allocation of your time, but are there currently any habits or sort of set rules or time blocking that you set for yourself to make sure that you're investing enough time on the maintenance and engineering, but also future proofing, so that you're not just doing firefighting, but you're also spending enough time building the infrastructure for the future?
Well, currently in this current role, I don't have, that sort of schedule in place. But I remember at 22/7, we used to have, that when we were doing like sort of, we operated in sprints, when we were sizing stories and stuff, and taking, some tickets, where like there was like 10% where you just choose whatever you want, your you time, where you say, okay, cool, I'm gonna study, or I'm gonna do this. So which is a great idea, like Jay. I feel like in my current role now, the company actually sort of needed analytics as of yesterday. So that's why we don't have some, time to sort of rest. So we have to sort of deliver.
But do you think as time goes on, you will make a greater priority to redistribute your schedule in a manner more along those like percentage times?
Yeah, yeah, I hope so, and I think so. Like we have already started sizing our tickets, like for instance on our board, so that definitely helps us sort of know what's top priority rather than just saying, no, guys, we want this, and that. And it will definitely help even product to know what we're gonna deliver in the next X weeks, and when we reach a particular milestone, we'll know that now this is what's left, and now it's more us just having fun with our clean data.
Okay, awesome, cool, thank you. Michael, Takunda, you chill.
I'm good.
Cool, thanks. Okay, and then one last question big question from my side. There's been a big thing, even in a previous meetups that I've attended, has been a kind of this idea that self-service analytics is going to really minimize the need for data analyst and analysis. And while that's been quite controversial, and I've heard some arguments to the contrary, one point that I thought was so interesting is that the rise of data engineering as the job to have for 2022 is partially in reaction to this. What are your thoughts on this? And did you just do this? Did you just swap over into this purely because of like its monetary aspect and because you were trying to future-proof your career and potentially move into more of like an ops side anyway? Or did you just really enjoy it more and find it more meaningful for the companies you were working at?
Yeah, basically for me the switch was more about me growing. As I've said, I want to be this guy where when there's a data related problem, call Des will help you. And luckily, this switch came with a little bit of money, which is great. And to talk about self-service analytics, so when data engineering sort of came out, there were these roles which were created, these opportunities which arised, like analytics engineers. Those guys are more like data analysts, but they sit in between data engineers and data analysts and BI analysts. So those guys, they are there to prepare the data for analysis or to prepare the data for self-service. So I feel like, at some point when, but I don't think it will ever happen when everyone within an organization, when they are data literate so that they can self-serve themselves. So it's going to be a little bit tough, but yeah, if data literacy can improve, then self-service analytics will definitely take over. But if HODs, business users are not data literate enough, then self-service analytics won't be utilized.
You've touched on data literacy. Has there ever been a situation for you where you've encountered someone misinterpreting your reports or your findings to such an extent that like it was just shocking for you? You couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. It has happened quite a number of times. then that's when I actually realized that we need to give out tips how to use, like for instance, Click. So we were using Click at my previous company. So that's how I actually started reading articles, each and every week. So after reading an article, I would share a tip on how to do a certain analysis or how to analyze something. Like for instance, you get some questions about something which is already there, on the server, on the BI in sort of space. So like for instance, like the self-service analytics, we had it. So it was basically a raw data set. So sometimes you come to me and say, okay, Des, I need a bunch of ID numbers of people who are employed. So it's just you going onto a dashboard and selecting those filters and exporting the report to yourself. So that's what I mean when I talk about data literacy and also self-service. So I would say that data literacy, it's a big thing out there. It's a big thing out there. If 8, not not according to study, but according to me, 80% of the senior management are Excel users. HODs, managers, and everyone, they love Excel. So by sort of equipping them, teaching them how to use BI tools effectively and navigating, then we will definitely overcome data literacy, and also we'll get to that stage where self-service analytics is fully utilized.
That sounds amazing. Just escaping from the Excel hell into a nicer place with Power BI and ClickView and SciSense and all of them. Okay. I think the last piece that I wanted to touch on was just, you mentioned your churn model being a project that you were extremely proud of. And I know you are continually trying to keep up with trends and innovation. Is there any like particular side projects or just general projects outside of that you feel have made a massive impact on your career, or that you are currently doing right now that you think will be hugely important?
Let me think. Yeah, I would say the way we're building the new infrastructure now at TSH, the new pipeline, me and Takunda, what we're doing there is something which is great. Where I got the idea of building it the way I'm doing it was actually on a meetup. I went to one meetup at TFG Labs. They're building their own data pipelines based on SQL. They're using dbt, and they have tests, they have alerts. Everything is just great. To think of it, data engineering is something which have been around, and people have been using these solutions, Python, Hadoop, and stuff. But if you look at a data team, you'll find one sort of thing, one sort of solution which is used by everyone within the data team. Even a product manager can write a SQL script. Anyone can write a SQL script. Imagine if you can write your entire pipeline in SQL, then it's, in terms of maintenance in future, you want to hire someone, it becomes fairly easy for you to get talent than to get someone who's a Python developer, or someone who's a Hadoop developer, or PySpark or something like that.
That sounds amazing, especially from employability and recruitment perspective. I know, just having him been involved in hiring processes already, just how difficult it can be to find the right BI guys. That's it from my side. I wanted to, before I thank Des for attending, does anybody have any further questions or comments
Hi, I've got more questions.
Cool.
Just sort of very generally, do you have any favorite tools or programs to use for data warehousing and BI? I know you've mentioned a couple before, but I don't know if there are any that you particularly like or think are great. And then also if there are any sort of data trends that you're interested in or watching quite closely at the moment.
So the solutions which I for building data warehouses and pipelines. So me personally, I'm a big fan of ELT. So we used to have ETL, which is extract, transform, and load. Now we have ELT, where we extract, load, and transform. So which is great, because if you think about it, when we were doing the ETL, we used to use solutions like Pentaho, IBM. Those solutions are quite pricey. Then we on the ELT side, you get solutions like Hivo, which have both capabilities of transforming your data and also moving it from one source to another. And they are cheap. You have tools like Stitch, which are very, very cheap. They like, you pay like something like $100 per month to move a lot of data from one source to another, and you can connect to multiple sources, and just push it to one lake house where you pick that data, maybe with with a with some notebook which you will use to transform it, like DBT, for instance, which is, you can actually have it open source. You can have it also on the cloud, yeah, and it's basically SQL. And if you're interested in drag and drop, I've mentioned Hivo. What else? Yeah, that's it on the solutions side of things. And on the trends, I don't have much. I literally don't have any sort of trends which I'm really much following at the current moment. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that question.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Des, I'll help you out with Takunda's question. Takunda just wanted to know if there's any hobby or fun thing that you do that you think assists him in your data career. I was reading a LinkedIn article the other day where the senior software architect was saying that his video game obsession has helped him throughout the years with his job. So I don't know if you have a similar thing.
Oh, well, I used to be a gamer back then, but that was when I was in varsity. Yeah, the only thing, the games or which I play is chess and Sudoku. I play chess like on chess.com. That's the only fun thing which, you know, which uses logic, which I do play.
You know what? I can picture you as a chess guy. I can picture it. So I believe you. I imagine it does help when it comes to thinking strategically. Okay, well then I'm going to call it a wrap here tonight, guys. Thank you so much, Des, for attending. Thank you, Jay and Michael, for also being here. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys, and have a great evening.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Celestine. See you on the next meetup.